Great. So thank you very much for attending here today. Today's session is really about my experience in connecting change management to excellence model success. And I wanted to know a little bit more about yourself, where you're coming from, so we got that. And what objectives do you wish to achieve through our session today? So thank you for sharing this. Ray, if you would like to share anything about yourself, please just put it in the chat as we move forward. Now, about myself a little bit, I'm connected to the organizational excellence specialist since many years now. I know Dawn Ringrose. She has her own model for organizational excellence. And myself, I have 24 plus years of experience. I started initially my studies as in biology, bioengineering, and then I got to be introduced to total quality management through the master's I've done. And I worked in the UAE for many years. After studying in Belgium, I moved to the UAE where I worked in the food industry. And there I got more exposure to business excellence models because the country was focusing a lot on excellence, what to do to support organizations move towards different levels of performance. And through that, I got to know the EFQM model, OES, blended models, Dubai Quality Award, MRM Awards. So all of these models which focus on bringing the organization to higher levels of performance and guiding them through to achieve excellence. And recently, I've been connected to the Shingo Institute. I have my organization established in Abu Dhabi, and we are Shingo licensed affiliates. And the Shingo model talks about culture at its core. And all of these discussions about excellence, we know that some organizations really, once they start something, any program they put in place, they succeed and they sustain that, others don't. And we see a lot of question marks around the success of all of these improvement projects with this excellence models, because not organizations are able to have that transformation happening. And this, through the research of the Shingo Institute, we noticed that it's really about the culture and about change management and about how to make sure that everyone in the organization understand the importance of their contribution, the importance of their behaviors, and what they need to do to make sure that that becomes a reality. So while we focus on systems in quality and in excellence, there's an element related to people which is strongly sometimes missed in what the organizations are doing. So all of this led me to why I'm here today, talking about change management and the importance of that in terms of adoption, helping organizations adopt excellence models. And I have worked in multicultural environments on mega projects. I spent 7 months on the mega project NEOM in Saudi Arabia. And I've worked in different parts of the world. Now I'm talking to you here from Ireland, from Zurich, but I live in Ireland. So that cultural aspect of any work that we're doing is very important. Now, change management helps us get that aspect stronger in organizations. And the question is, how do we really make sure that everyone is following whatever programs we're putting in place, whatever new systems we're developing? How to make those really part of the day-to-day activities of the organization? So with this, I think we all agree that not all change effort or projects succeed. So what can we do to make that really change? And how can we help organizations become better in what they're doing? And thank you, Kevin, for joining us here for the session today. Kevin is also an organizational excellence specialist, and we had the opportunity to work recently on one of the government excellence projects. Now, I have 2 questions, and I think a lot of organizations, a lot of people ask these questions. Why do people fear change? Why change doesn't really become a reality? When we decide on a change project, we don't really get that to succeed. The other thing is what makes change adoption successful. So how do we move from that fear of change to really making sure that change adoption is successful in the organization? And that's what led me to the training that I've attended with ACMP, the Association for Change Management Practitioner, and to get certified as CCMP. Now, we have a lot of models. I think if you look at ATCAR and other models, all of them, they give kind of a roadmap, things to focus on when it comes to change management and how to help organizations really adopt change initiatives. For me, what I found in the ACMP, and I'll be talking to you a little bit about, is that practical side. It's a standard. And sometimes even if we know different things, if we know how organizations I mean, even we know the different methodologies, it's not necessarily we're able to get the results that we need to get. So, and thank you for Ovid for joining us. So change cannot be put on people. I think that's one of the first mistakes that people does. They bring something new, they just say you need to do it. The best way to instill change is to do it with them, create it with them. And that's really what we teach when we do change management. This is what we focus on, how to bring people along, how to make sure that the change we're putting in place becomes part of the DNA of the organization, that people believe in that change and they want to really be part of it. And if I look at the excellence models, this is what we want to do when we start adopting a new excellence model, how to make sure that we have the buy-in of people. How do we get that excitement, that enthusiasm in people to follow and to be able to execute the plans we're putting for them? So change, the first, I think, mistake is that change is not something you just bring out of the organization. This is what you need to do. It has to be really part of what we create. And focusing on the Shingo model and the culture, we know that once we build these systems should be able to help people execute. These systems should drive the positive behavior in people. And we want to do that through change management. And this synergy that change management has and with other systems is growing. And we see the importance of it as we start talking more and more about the importance of change management in adoption of excellence programs, improvement programs, lean, and all of these things that we try to help the organization go through. And recently, there's more and more talks about transformation. So you cannot really transform the organization if you don't transform the people's behavior. And that's where change management is really important. Michael? Do you have any question?
No, not at this time. Sorry, I was not on mute.
Do you see the slides? Okay. Sorry, I have just a... Yeah, we will be sharing the recording and on YouTube, and we will make also the presentation slides available. Thank you, Obed, for the question. Sorry, the door is open. I do hope that you're not able to hear because it's a little bit warm these days. So now what we will be focusing on in this session is how to get an overview of change management and its benefits. We developed an A3 tool for change management, which is aligned with the ACMP change management standard. So I'll be sharing it here with you today, and it will show you the alignment with other elements and other things, plans that we put in place usually when we try to adopt excellence models, and understand how change management benefits adoption of excellence models. Now, the presentation is split into 3 parts: a change management overview, then a change management standard, and the change management and excellence itself. Now, I think you are familiar with change management history, and I'll be very brief talking about this for those who are not familiar with that. So pre-1990, the academics began to understand how humans and human systems experience change. We started having questions about the human behavior and their reaction, why do they fear change, and how to start really looking at changing that fear into something more that's going to help them become more adapt to that change that we're asking them to go through. In the 1990s, change management became on the radar, more and more on the radar, and it started really becoming a discussion within the business sphere. In the 2000s, formalization started with additional structure and rigor codifying change management as a discipline, and we started really getting all of these methodologies that you mentioned that are part of what organizations utilize to make sure that they have successful change management, change happening in the organization. In 2014, it was the first time that the standard was established for change management through ACMP, the Association for Change Management Practitioners. And the standard really sets kind of a nice foundation, nice normalization for the practices related to change management. And I would like to look at change, if we look at it from a practical or our day-to-day life, is look at marriage and parenthood. You really need to go through a lot of changes when you get married. For the first time, you live in a house together. Each one comes with his own culture, his own practices, his own habits, and you need to break that to create something together. And even when you have a new child, you need to really get to use to this new life and put new habits in place, new practices, adapt to to your child needs and be able to move together as a couple, still have to accommodate the needs of the new baby who joined the family. So all of these are major changes. If you look at them and translate that into the organization go through all this. Every time there's a new project, every time there's a new system we adopt, we would like to go through, digitalize a process. All of these things has to go through. So how do you facilitate this change, and how do we make sure that it becomes successful? Unfortunately, not all marriages are successful. And sometimes maybe because they don't know how to go through that change by itself. So, so there's a lot of things that organizations need to facilitate for the people, for the teams inside the organization, to make sure that change becomes really a success story for the organization. Now, there are 10 trends impacting change management these days. And if you see here on the screen, we talk digital transformation itself, which is impacting the change. It's impacting the change management, and change management impacts digital transformation. It's a two-way street. There's more need for agile change management. So the methodologies of change management needs to adapt sometimes to certain contexts, certain needs of the organizations. We are looking more and more for data-driven change and being able to understand the change impact on the organization using data. Remote work, hybrid work environments. Imagine you want to make a change across the entire organization, and 50%, for example, of your employees are not on site, or they spend half of their week on site. How much harder that change is going to be. And that's something really impacting change management efforts in organization. Employee well-being, human-centric workplace. I tie back that to the culture of the organization and the focus of the organization. If you're focusing on the human element in your workplace, if you're focusing on the well-being of your employees, you're definitely gonna develop better systems that suit their needs. You're gonna look at how they can easily adapt and look at things which are user-friendly for them, keeping in the same time a good balance between what you're asking them to do, the impact on their work-life balance, and the load you're putting on them. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging initiatives. That's also one thing which is very important. We're looking at more and more diverse workplaces. Diversity means having to put more effort to make sure that people have good synergies that can work together, your culture matches those needs, and you'll be able to achieve the change and the success of the change that you're putting in place. Leadership development, we always talk about this. It really takes a lot and strong leadership to be able to do anything in the organization. Like we talk about leaders, not necessarily the senior leaders, but anyone who is leading a team, leading a project, needs to have a certain skills in leadership. And leadership development in the organization is more and more. We talk more about these days. If you look around, you'll see that we're talking about the middle management, the role of the middle management in improvement projects. And when we talk middle management, they are leaders. There are leadership at every level of the organization. In the Shingo model, when we talk about the levels of the organization and the culture, we talk about executives, middle management, and associates. So the middle management, the leadership at that level is very important also for any type of programs that the organization is trying to implement. Collaborative tools and technologies. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on this. Looking at the new technologies, looking at how can we benefit from the new tools, the AI and all these tools that are now at our available to us. It is very important. We look at, when we talk remote work, we look at collaborative tools. We look at those tools, how they facilitate communication, collaboration, exchange of information, lessons learned within the teams and the organization. So collaborative tools and technology for change management are very important when we want to go through transformation. The change management system itself needs to be looked at. How can I make things easier? How can I facilitate? And you will see the plans I'm going to be talking about in a while. All of these plans, how can I make sure that my people have the tools, the resources to do these things easily and be able to get to the outcome they want and communicate? These days, communication, and it's always been key for any effort that we go through. And if we don't communicate well, it's hard to get the results. So how can we focus on collaborative tools that are going to make the change management effort successful? Sustainability initiatives, we talk a lot about sustainability. For me, sustainability is really the environment, the green aspect of it, but there's also how to make everything we're doing sustainable in the long run, and that's business sustainability. And we need to look at all of this also when we talk about change. AI, automation, I mean, all of this is critical, and it's impacting the change management effort these days. Now, I will start talking a little bit about ACMP and the change management standard. And this is a figure that's very important from the standard itself. And when we talk about change management, what we're trying to do is, I don't know if you know the theory that there are 3 phases of change. One is we have the change itself that is we need to dissolve that structure that we have, and then we go to transformation, and then we get to the state, the to-be state. So we move from a current state through a transformation, transition to a to-be state. So these are these 3 stages: your current state, your transition, and then your to-be state. Now, with the adoption of a change management standard and a structured methodology to do change, we are increasing the chances to have benefit realization. So we're telling the people, we're telling the organization that doing this, having a standard and following a certain methodology is going to help you move from this black line to the green line. You're increasing your chances to have a better effective change management. Why? Because you're having a standard, you're having something which is proven, that has been adopted by others and demonstrated its effectiveness, because you have all the elements which I'm gonna be sharing with you in a while that are going to be looked at thoroughly, deeply when you want to do your change management. And I look at the excellence models and how and even you will see, I'm gonna talk a little bit about project management. We lack sometimes, and I think the past 10, 15 years with the development of all the excellence models, with development of new standards, sometimes integration and synergy lacked. If we go back to the ISO standard, for example, when ISO standard, you had all of these standards separate. In 2015, they started looking at least at as a structure, which is standard for all of them, the NXSL. And then now we started talking about integrated management system. If we don't have integration in organization, we're losing a lot of good elements. We lose the synergy, we lose the cohesiveness that is needed to be there between teams, and we start creating silos. So we understood this from the ISO experience, and I think it's something very important to understand when we talk about excellence models, when we talk about change management, is how to make sure that all of these new standards we put in place are somehow helping us to create more synergies, more alignment, and not the contrary. And I saw that in the change management standard, and whether we're talking about OES or other OEF, the Organizational Excellence Framework that Don has developed, or other models, it is important to see where are the elements of overlap, where are the elements of synergies to help people. When we do change, when we do excellence model, it is executed through people. So how can we make the life of people easier so they don't fear that change? So they are part of the change itself and not really on the sides, and they feel that it's a burden on them, and they don't really give us what we expect from them in terms of adopting the new practices and making sure that we have success at the end. So this is really a very nice graph showing the difference between the future state, the benefit realization with and without a strong methodology for change management. And I would like to really believe that having a structure and standard usually really helps organization to understand, and people who are leading that, to understand what they need to do, how to do it, and be able to adjust it to their organization. Nothing is really black and white when it comes to this, and systems needs to be tailor-made, needs to be adapted and adjusted to the organization. They give us guidelines, they give us how to do things, what to do, but the how is really needs to be fit for your organization, and the content needs to be adjusted to your needs. Now, the reasons for why change efforts fail are many. And here I have these points, which I think really from the standard itself, but they talk really to the causes of failure that we all encounter when we talk about change management. First is inappropriate executive sponsorship. You cannot start to change, and it's harder to start to change at a department level or at a team level. It has to come from higher authorities. It has to be really something which is top down. When you decide to do a change, when you go for transformation and decide to implement a new system, you want to start lean, you need executive sponsorship. People on the top need really to give that green light. And if people don't show the way and they don't talk about that, it's hard for people below to follow. Now, starting on a solution before the underlying problem is fully understood. Funny enough, we had an earlier meeting today and we were talking about some consultants giving solution even before they step in the organization. How can you give a solution if you don't understand the problem itself and understand the real root cause of the problem? So sometimes we start putting solutions without really doing that effort into understanding what the real problem is. Failure to spend time on systematically analyzing the people and styles that are involved. Like I go back and saying, change management excellence is about people. How can we do something without understanding our people, understanding their behavior, understanding the culture we have in place, understanding the leadership style, understanding how people are going to react to this? And there's a lot of methodologies of change that talks to this. Now, the change management, the ACMP standard, tells us how to go and look at it in details and have a plan when it comes to this. And my expertise with culture tells me that really it's a start point. Some solutions might work for an organization, not for another, for a department, not for another, because we have different cultures, we have different styles, and we need to make sure, even if we decide to do something that's not really fit, we have to adjust them. We have to work on our culture, understand what is it, the culture that is needed to have that change become a success in the organization. Failure to validate the proposed solutions. It's important to do that validation before to be able to make sure that we have the right solutions. And having a change management standard followed with the steps that I'm going to be sharing with you, the different groups will help have that. Failure to plan for certainty. Failure to communicate with what is happening and why. I will stop a little bit to say why. It is important to get the buy-in of people by starting telling them why. And when we say why, it is important to say why if we don't change, what's the impact? So what's the impact on us if we don't go through that change, if we don't do digitalization, if we don't build a new facility, if we don't change our production line? What is that? How is that impacting us as an organization if we don't go through this change? That's a stronger message for people than just telling them why they need to do something. It's telling them what's going to happen if they don't go through that change itself. And the why it's really a strong message. People need to understand. I always give this example when we started, I think 10 years back, looking at why people were not following our food safety practices. And we did trainings, we did a lot of things for them, but they were still not following. And then when we went back and checked with them, we understood that the training was not touching them. They were not really getting a strong message from the training. We're just telling them, you need to do this, you need to do this, don't do that. Once we changed our methodology with them, we started engaging them in deeper discussions, tying it back to them as individuals if they eat food which is not suitable for human consumption. So they started understanding, they connected with the cause, and they started following practices. So it is important to understand what message is going to hit your people and impact them, what message you need to have around the why. Failure to define measurable outcomes and waypoints. So it is important also to see where you're heading, to see your finish line. What do you want to achieve? What are the things you would like to have, and measure them? And that's where, when we say benefit realization in the previous graph, it is about that. How do you measure that benefit realization? And we talk a lot about quick wins these days, and we want to make sure that in our plans, we have those points where we tell people, okay, this is, you have achieved this, great, that's a milestone, and let's celebrate. Now, we don't need to have a lot of quick wins, which are not really maybe meaningful, but making people celebrate the different stages of your project, seeing that outcome is important. So that's why we measure, and we share that measurement also with people. One of the things also of the reasons for failure is absence of strong governance in place, particularly around dependencies. And I think this is really a big miss. And I spoke a little bit earlier about silos, right? We created a lot of silos by having all of these standards, different departments talking about different things. Dependencies are there in organization, whether we want it or not. Departments depend on each other. We talk a lot about internal customer inequality. So how do we need to focus on these dependencies when we make a change plan? What is going to impact that change? And what are the things that I need to look at to make sure that I'm not missing anything and I'm looking at all the risks and everything that's going to impact my change. Because if I tackle those, I'll be increasing my chances to have a successful change. Not dealing properly with risk and contingency, again, it falls a little bit to the first point. So it's important to have really to look at the risks and the contingencies that we need to put in place to mitigate those risks. Lack of clear sense of urgency when warning signs are clear. So that's also one of the things that we need to have as part of our plans. Lack of shared commitment and leadership. Depends on the change, depends on its nature, who are the department involved. If you don't have commitment and good leadership, definitely your change is going to suffer. Lack of ability to recognize obstacles to the vision. We tie the change to strategic objectives, to the vision of the organization. If you don't have this clear tie to your vision, you're not gonna really be able to understand the obstacles that's gonna come in your way and what's gonna deviate you from delivering up to your vision. Lack of planning for and creating short-term wins. I just mentioned this. It is important to have those short-term wins. Now, I had a question in one of the seminars I've had, I think it was an in-person event. Someone told me like, but our management don't like quick wins. Yeah, I mean, I don't like quick wins a lot. I say few of them that needs to be really part of the success story, ongoing success story, but they should not become that some organizations started putting quick wins, but they deviated from the strategic objectives they have. So it has to be really a good balance, focusing on those short-term wins compared to the overall benefit realization you're looking for. Poor anchoring of changes within an organizational culture. I go back to this again, is we really need to make sure that the culture we have supports the change and vice versa, that the change we're gonna put in place, it's not gonna really harm what we already have, which is, I mean, good culture in place, and they support somehow each other rather than the contrary. Now, new selling with old habits don't work. So how can we really make sure that we change the mindset of people? If you want to have a new change, a new project, you want to make sure that your people are ready for it, right? So we prepare them, we do the why, we do the communication, leadership, and all that. How do we really practically look at this when it comes to the organization? Now, in the history of change management, we started talking about methodologies, and gradually we see more and more that it became kind of a capability that the organization need to have. We build change management capabilities. Now, for me, it has to be part of every leader's work to understand the change management, why it's important, maybe not to follow a standard itself, because you need someone to manage that, to have a system for change management, but people needs to have those capabilities. And if you look at organization, we have the behaviors and practices, but we have also the systems. Now, the behaviors and practices, we develop those through the culture itself, through the excellence frameworks that we adopt. We look at what we need to do. We look at these things. But we need to have really looking at the process of change management itself. And again, it has to be integrated. It has to be aligned. We can't really have a new system that we put in place separate, and we have a department for change management doesn't talk to the others or doesn't know how to work with the others. So process integration and alignment happens. And if you look at the standard itself, it talks about quality management, it talks about project management integration. In the ACMP, there's also a part about integrating change management with project management. We cannot do excellence by, excellence is holistic. It's for the entire organization, whether we're talking EFQM or OEF or any other model, we're looking at the entire organization. So if you do an excellence model adoption, you definitely need to look at all of these elements and how they work together. So you need to look at where do they overlap and how do they support each other. And we see this clearly in ACMP standard, is we have a part talking about project management integration. And we see elements of quality management, for example. So and I think many times I was asked the question, for example, if you use a Shingo model or OEF model, do I need to stop doing what I'm doing? Do I need to follow it and stop the system which I already put in place? No, you look at how to strengthen what you have by having a structured methodology. And same, when you bring change management or excellence models, excellence framework that you want to adapt, you need to look at where it intersects with whatever you're doing, with the systems in place, and what new elements it's bringing, and how to keep that synergy. So we should really focus on integration, alignment, rather than creating more silos. And change management role is to create that synergy. So we should be careful not to really do it in a different way where we have a change management department looking at change alone, and that won't work. And you'll see that the plans that are part of the ACMP standard talks to this. Now, why do we really need to focus on change management? We need to change the mindset of people, the mindset of everyone in the organization. People who believe in the change, sometimes we need also change their mindset, because maybe their practices and habits are focused on something which is not going to help us at the end do the benefit realization. We need to change the mindset of those who doesn't believe in the change. So it is important really to look at all of these elements when we want to really make a big difference in the organization. It's really about how to change the mindset of people. We need to have positive influence. We need to have alignment. We need to make everybody comfortable with the new change we're going through. And we need agility. And focusing on changing mindset is important for the change management effort itself. Now, let me take you through the change management standard itself. If you look at the ACMP standard, we talk about these benefits from adopting a standard and a structured methodology. It helps us increase organizational readiness, flexibility, and adaptability. This is what we need when we go through a change. We need to be ready, but we need also to be flexible. Sometimes we start something and we get deviated because it doesn't suit us. So that deviation, that flexibility is required. If you have a plan, and if you have a structured plan that took care of all of these elements, it's easy to be flexible and easy to be adaptable to any new situation. Sometimes in the middle of a long project, something changes, technology changes, you want to become adaptable. So having a structured methodology and a standard to follow helps a lot. Increase stakeholder engagements, morale, and preparedness. So this is also very important, because having the ACMP focuses on everybody, focuses on engaging stakeholders, on making them prepared. And that's important. You will see an increase in that, in the impact on stakeholders once you have a structured methodology. Minimize the depths of any performance and productivity decline during the change, and also accelerate and maximize performance during and following the change. Sometimes we do change projects, and then we believe that once the project is over, our job is over. It's not. You need to really make sure it's sustainable. And so that sustainability is part also of the same ACMP standard itself. So what do we do following the change to really make sure that it becomes institutionalized? It's become part of what everybody is doing on a daily basis. Think about IT systems. How many times we start something and then we discover just 10% of users are doing it. So why? What can we do to make sure that it's not the case moving forward? Increase stakeholder utilization of and proficiency in the new way. So that's also like how to increase that user utilization of the new system that we put in place. Minimize the learning curve and speed to adoption of the new way. That's very important. The new way is a to-be state. This is what we want to achieve, the new way of doing things. So minimizing the learning curve happens when you have a structure system that has been followed that helps you identify the risk, the dependencies, and all of that, and what needs to be done to make sure everybody has the knowledge needed to make sure that the things can happen as per plan. Increase the likelihood of benefits realization. That's the ultimate, I think, goal of the change management, and to make sure that we have a benefit realization as per the plans that we put in place. Optimize long-term sustainability once this future state is achieved. And this is one of the things that is sometimes really missed and overlooked when we talk about change management plans. Please don't hesitate to give me your questions, put your questions in the chat, and I'll be happy to take them. Now, the benefits, if you look at them, we summarize them in 3 things: increasing productivity, increasing morale, and increases sustainability of the change effort itself at the end. Now, the structure of the change management, the ACMP standard, focuses on planning, focuses on the risk element, making sure that we have the agility in the system, focuses on integration, adoption, and sustainability. Now, it has 5 process groups. For those who doesn't know it, it's focusing on 5 process groups. The first one on the top is evaluating change impact and organizational readiness. You really look at how your organization is, what are the elements that makes it ready or not ready for that change. So you look at both. You evaluate the change impact, that change once you put it in, once you have it implemented, what impact is it going to have on your organization? we ask the question, are we ready for the change? And if not, what we need to do. Then we start looking at the second group, formulating change management strategy. What is my strategy? We draft our strategy for change management. This is high level. I'm going to share with you through the A3 that we developed some of the elements, the plans that we put in place. Then we look at developing change management plans. This is the part where you see the entire plans coming together to support the change management team execute on the change management strategy and have their things done properly. Executing change management plans, closing the change management effort, which is very important, and part of it is sustainability. So if you look at it, for me, it's the PDCA again. We're looking at planning, do, check, and act, right? So we look at closing. We look at really making sure that whatever we planned has been executed. If not, what then we need to do. And we have that lessons learned process that feeds into new projects also. Now, the A3, we developed it, and it's very complex. If you'd like to have it, please don't hesitate to let me know after the session. It is on an Excel because it's very complex. But what we looked at these three things: people, the process, and the deliverables. And we looked at the 5 groups of the change management. Now, the change management standard, it's very nicely done. It's a big document. It talks about these process groups and how to move from one step to another. It has a lot of details. And we are delivering these trainings for preparation for the certification itself. So it looks at all of these steps and what are the outcomes. So it looks at the input and outcome, and some outcomes, how do they feed into other inputs too. So it shows you the in and out of every process. And if you look at it here, it is very complex. So we start doing the impact analysis. We look at the culture. There's a part that asks question, how is your culture now? What are the elements of your culture that are going to support the change or not? What do you need to do? So we look at all of these things as we plan. Now I'm going to detail just one part, which is very important for you to understand the elements that are part of that change management standard itself. Now, look at this, which is, I think, in the bottom of my A3 somehow. So we here, after looking at the change impact and the readiness and putting the strategy, we look at the communication and the education and all of these things that are there. We develop these plans. We develop a comprehensive change management plan. One is a resource plan. One is a communication plan, sponsorship plan, stakeholder engagement plan, learning and development plan, measurement and benefit realization plan, sustainability plan. These are key plans that are the outcome of all the work of preparation work that happens after we decide to go through a change. And these are the plans which are going to help us execute. So we have also, we integrate the change management plan and project management plan. And once these are approved, they serve, like this is my plan, serves to be executed and then to be adjusted once we do reviews. So with the second part, 5.4 talks about executing the change management plan. So we look at all of these plans and how do we execute them. Resource plan talks about financial resources, human resources, information resources, physical resources. Sorry, I think financial should be deleted. Physical resources. Then we look at the communication plan, sponsorship plan, stakeholder plan, execution, learning and development plan, execution, and sustainability plan, execution. And when we look at sustainability plan, we have to look also at the communication events. Did we do the communication like we planned? Benefits reviews. Did we realize those benefits that we have agreed that we need to get them at the end? Business performance report, evaluation and reviews. All of these things, we look at them when we start looking really at the execution part. And then we do the reviews and we modify the plans accordingly. And then we look at how much we have achieved out of that plan. Now, if we achieved 80–90%, that's great. It means our planning was correct. Even change management, initially it's a learning process for a lot of people. The standard itself is going to help you to understand what are the things you need to consider. You see all these elements here. This is the outcome of your change management process readiness initially. And then once you execute and you look at your lessons learned, you can really feed into your next cycle of change management. So this is really a PDCA approach. If you look at it, for me, I don't think there's anything more powerful than the plan, do, check, act mindset. And I'm very happy to see it part of the ACMP standard too. If you look at the excellence models also, we have that. We decide on we have our enablers, we look at our performance, our results, and we see how we are improving based on that cycle on cycle. So the change management, if you look at it, it is really very helpful methodology to put in place and combine it with anything that you are working on. Now, how does it really accelerate the adoption of an excellence model? Change readiness. It facilitates identification of gaps for success. We do sometimes assessments for excellence models to see where we are and identify the gaps. Change management helps you identify your readiness to start that journey and to look at your culture and to look at the things. Some other organizations need more detailed culture assessment. There are plenty of tools like that, but the change management really helps you to identify a few things, and you can couple it. You can have another, and this is where integration could happen by having a culture assessment that looks at your culture deeply if you have doubts that your culture is not the right one. So how do you work on those elements? Change plans integrate with excellence model implementation. They help, like you saw, we have a stakeholder engagement plan. So you look at engaging your stakeholders effectively in your adoption process. Managing risk collectively, you look at the risk for the change management, the risk in your system, in being able to adopt that system. So it's really an integration at this level. Fostering genuine collaboration, because you're forcing people to work together. When we develop learning and development plan, we work with HR. When we develop communication plan, we work with HR, with our communication department, if we have, with quality, if they are doing that. We really look at genuine collaboration in the organization. It gives a place for people to collaborate and create those synergies. Joint focus on culture and behavior, which is very important for success, and joint focus on a systematic approach. You cannot really do quick transformation and accelerate your transformation and do it successfully if you don't have a systems thinking. And this kind of approaches help to have that systematic approach, system thinking in the organization, because people will start to see clearly where do their roles really support each other. Now, with this, I thank you very much for listening. We've crossed 45 minutes on the presentation. I'm open for questions. And again, thank you very much for listening. Now, I see a comment from Kevin. Please use the chat if you would like to ask questions, or unmute yourselves, and we're happy to take your question. Now, Kevin, thank you for your comment. A key part of change readiness is an assessment of absorptive capacity of the organization. This is a key input in validating an appropriate solution which the organization can actually implement. Exactly. So we need to make sure that the solution we put in place, it's fit for our organization. And all the elements we look at in the change management process initially helps us to identify whether that one is really good for us or not. Thank you for your comment, Kevin. I'm happy to see you here today. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Nancy. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to have a picture of myself behind myself. I picked the wrong background, I guess. I really enjoyed your presentation today. This is the first time I've actually been fully introduced to the ACMP model, and it looks like an extremely well thought out and fully integrated model to use in change management. I can't stress enough, though, the assessment of change readiness ensures that you pick something that the organization can actually implement. Many times in a change initiative, it also informs all of those 7 elements of or the 7 domains that you talk about, or the 7 key components in a change management plan. Sometimes we prepare to do an implementation and I just have to tell the organization to stop, and we're going to need to spend 3 months getting your people ready to actually implement this so that it is possible to implement it, that it can actually be sustained after it's implemented. And so change readiness and that pre-planning step is so absolutely essential.
Absolutely. And if you see, I mean, I focused a lot on just showing you here the plans, but the preparation is really key. And whatever we do, all the things that we put in place initially before the plans is really preparation for that. So let me just go back a little bit. Maybe I can show you, sorry, it's not going in my, oh, I forgot I have all of these. Yeah. So if you go here, I don't know if you can see, all this is really preparation. We look at the change impact, change. I mean, we look at the organizational readiness. We look at assessing the risk related to the change. We look at all of these. And if you see, there's a lot of things that comes out of this one that feeds into the other ones. So I think that's the beauty of also of the standard itself, that it focuses a lot on planning. The first part is the longest one that feeds into all the other plans that they are there. And I think to Michael's question, what aspects of the change management are often underestimated or not given the appropriate attention? I would summarize this in three things. First, like what Kevin mentioned, is making sure that the change is fit for you. Whatever plans you're putting in place, that they are fit for the organization, that you really, and that's why we ask why we're doing the change and what's the impact of not doing that change. And we look also at, is this really going to help me go where I want to go? What needs to be done to make that work? The second one is really, we look at the culture. I think a lot of things, having worked with the Shingo model for long and the culture element, we know that if people are not part of the change, and that was my first message to you, it's hard really to have success. They need to believe in it. They need to be advocates. When we look at the ACNP, we choose some agents, some change management agents, change agents, which are from informal networks too. We look at people who have influence on others, people listen to them. That's very important. That's why for me, having a department managing change, the department will give you direction, will give you methodology, a system to follow. You need other elements. You need all these people who are influential in the company and they believe in the change and they can help. And I was asked one time a question, what do you do with someone resistant to change? I told him I do my best to bring him as to be an agent for change somehow, because then he will be, and because some people who are really resistant are vocal sometimes about negative things, if you turn them to be the vocal about positive things, that's a great win and a great influence on others. So this aspect of people understanding the culture, your people, the styles, the behavior is really a big miss. So organizations who understand that makes really a big difference. And I think finally is looking at the sustainability of the change. It's not just one, you're not just making something for now. How does this gonna feed into the future? And how do you sustain it in the future? How do you learn from it also? That lessons learned, how do you make sure that it is something alive? It's not just something you've done, that's it, we leave it and we move to another project. How to continue that. And communication is also very, very important beyond your go live date or the end of your project or things like that. Recognition also will help to keep things alive. Now, Ola, she said the idea of co-creating the change with the stakeholders I have found to be the most effective, albeit some senior stakeholders see this as slowing down the process. Look, I think what I was trying to say when I spoke about silos, we created a lot of silos with having so many different things in the organization separated, and stakeholders, I think, sometimes we keep them out of the loop, but I think that you're absolutely right that it is important to really have the stakeholders' involvement. And you have to be selective who should be involved and what sometimes to get that. And it is very important. It's not slow down, and it might slow you in the beginning, but it will give you a big speed at the end when you want to execute. So I agree with you totally, Ola. Atif, thank you very much for your note. So what are my thoughts on regularly reviewing internal structures and resources to ensure the sustained achievement of excellence? Now, I'm not sure if you meant internal structures. Is this like big restructuring, moving a lot of pieces apart, or just looking at some things internally to keep continuously improving them? So for sustained excellence, I think organizations these days are going through a lot of changes regularly. Not all of them necessary, not all of them needed, unfortunately. Especially when we have new leadership coming in, they change things, they change people, they move things around. For me, that like I believe excellence, to have sustained excellence is okay to have changes, as long as you have clear changes and understanding the impact of these changes on your elements of excellence. When we talk about the FQM, we have the 5 enablers. So if you understand how these are impacting your results, so any change in enablers, you can be really understand what impact it's going to have on your results at the end. So for me, silos are the danger thing in the organization. Changes are less if you have people talking together, departments talking together, people understanding the design of the organization, the structures, and what are the impacts of changes on these elements. So excellence is dynamic. It keeps changing because it's linked to your performance, but anything that's going to impact your performance is something you need to look at because it might impact your excellence, but you really need to understand where are your results coming from, what's your culture, the behavior of people, your objectives, and make sure that you are taking care of that, even if you have changes in structures. Now, if you have major changes in structures, that's very risky, like really major restructuring and these kind of things. I hope I've answered your question, Atif.
I just wanted to pick up on one other thing you mentioned earlier about scheduling in quick wins. There's a couple of large mistakes that are overlooked, going back to Michael's question as well, which is trying to not integrating change management with project management, because project managers are very focused on getting things done. Senior management wants to see things get done, but I often find that the project manager schedules things without thinking of throughput or without thinking of the time that you need to get a change project off the ground by involving people. And those quick wins are really important to get people on side, but also not packing too much into the first month or first 2 months of the change initiative, because as soon as you start missing those deadlines of a packed schedule, you start losing the crowd, you start losing the belief in the change, you start losing belief in the success of what you're trying to achieve. And that's a really important part, is project managers need to have a co-lead who's a change manager, and that change manager has to be able to hold people back, moving too quickly.
Okay, Kevin, sorry. I think someone was on mute.
Yeah, so that was the biggest thing, is that focusing on slowing down the kickoff so that you're bringing everyone along and you can hit those initial targets so that people begin to believe in the project. The quick wins help them believe in the project. And then you start to build momentum, and that will lead to success and ultimately sustainability.
Absolutely. And one of the things we look at when we do the change management is we look at the people who are involved in it, the workload. When we look even at the sponsors, we look really at the people who are going to be part of it. And we look at the bandwidths, how they are able to achieve or not achieve. So we look at their competence. We look at the people, what trainings they need. So it's really, planning is key. It's really very, very important to look at all of these elements. And I agree with Kevin. I mean, we really need to make sure that things are successful. That's the role of change management, is a facilitation role, is making sure that that change is successful. How they do that is by looking at all of these elements and getting really plans that work for the organization. For me, copy paste doesn't really work. And I said it's a learning process. So even when someone starts something new like this methodology and following the standard, they will get to do some learning. What are the things I will put here? What are the things that really are objective and realistic for the organization? So I agree with Kevin, it's a lot of things that initially needs to go into that planning process. But again, it's a lot of I would say integration that needs to happen. And that's why I like the model. It really looks at project management and tells you these things. If you have a project management office in place, how do you really work with them on these elements? And lately I've been involved with also project management offices, and I'm doing preparing an assessment for their maturity and impact. And I see a lot of overlaps. That's why I think organization, for me, key is removing silos where not necessary. Make sure that departments work together, disciplines work together to get things done in a more steady way, quicker, and make sure that they're sustainable. With this, I would like to thank the joiners who joined us at the end of the session. The session is recorded. Don Ringrose will share it, I think, on YouTube. So happy to take any questions after you receive that, and you'll have the chance to listen to it. And please feel free to connect with me. I'm available on LinkedIn, and I'm not sure if I put my... So I'm part of the Organizational Excellence Specialist, and we do have a lot of projects working with organizations on their culture or excellence and change management. So thank you very much for attending, and have a good afternoon, everybody.
Or good morning in my case. Nice to see you,
Oh, good
Nancy.
morning, Kevin. Good morning. I was
Was an early
thinking,
start.
yeah.
It's an early start
Thank you.
here.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much for joining. Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye now.